Well, it is official, ladies and gentlemen. Google Stadia has officially shut down completely. You can see right here it's been added to the Killed by Google website that is essentially a graveyard of Google projects that ultimately went nowhere. Google Stadia right here, 2019 to 2023, and apparently a few other projects died along the way. You may recall that this is a cloud gaming service that launched back in November 19th, 2019, but it was announced just a couple months ago, back in September of 2022, that Google Stadia hasn't gained the traction with users that Google expected, so we have made the difficult decision to begin winding down our Stadia streaming service. And it was announced here that the official day of the shutdown would be January 18th, 2023, which was just a couple days ago, which brings Google Stadia's lifespan to a little over 3 years. Not a great tenure for what was a massive investment for Google. This all happened, by the way, months after Google denied rumors that Google Stadia would be shutting down. Then again, Phil Harrison didn't really keep employees in the loop about potential shutdown, so it should come as no surprise that many employees didn't know that this would happen. But yeah, for Google Stadia, it felt like the writing was on the wall since pretty much the beginning, and the writing only got clearer as the life of Stadia continued to unravel. From day one, Stadia received meager reception because the service launched just rife with technical issues. The cloud technology just took a while to stabilize. It got better over time, but on day one, it just made such an awful impression that many people really didn't gravitate towards it. But I think what really killed it was the awful business model where you had to pay full price for games that you could only access through the cloud. And the drawbacks of that include that you can't download it to local hardware, which means those games cannot be modded, which means it requires a good internet connection and good internet speeds, which may be limited by data caps. And cloud gaming in general just has drawbacks like input lag, visual artifacts and compression, and more. Something that can help smooth out some of the visual roughness is 4K resolution, but 4K 60 FPS was locked behind a subscription. Not to mention that some games that launched on Stadia could not do true 4K, unlike what was advertised by Google. It didn't help that games would sometimes just be worse on Stadia, not only because it was a cloud-only platform, but also because some games just cost more on Stadia than other storefronts, because on other storefronts the price went down, but on Stadia it'd still be full price. Some games released with outdated versions that were missing content, updates, patches, and features. Some games just straight up looked worse and ran worse on Stadia than other platforms, despite Stadia having more teraflops. And certain games would just release too late on Stadia. Games would be out on other platforms before they came to Stadia, and there was no incentive to get the worst version that would come at a later date. The library of games was also lacking, not just at launch, but also throughout the lifespan of Stadia. Google spent way too much money just bringing a handful of old AAA games to the platform, like tens of millions of dollars per game, like Red Dead Redemption 2. They didn't spend their money wisely. They didn't give other developers enough incentive to bring their games to Stadia, not to mention no first-party exclusive. There was a point where Stadia went over like 40 days without releasing a single new game or update, which was depressing for the Stadia enthusiasts. The lack of features didn't help matters. There were so many cool features that were advertised before Stadia's launch that never made it to launch and never made it to Stadia at all throughout its entire lifespan. Combine that with the competition that came after from Xbox Cloud Gaming and GeForce Now, on top of the fact that Stadia, shortly after establishing their own first-party studios, shut them down like a little over a year later, and the fact that the user base of Stadia completely plateaued even after various sales and offers and free trials. And I mean, it was really obvious that Stadia would not last. I mean, you can see right here that if you go to the Google Play Store, the Stadia app has only been downloaded 1 million plus times since the launch 3 years ago. The Stadia app is required to run Stadia, so that gives an indication for roughly how many people actually got Stadia and tried it out. Not a whole lot for a major platform that's existed for a little over 3 years. At launch, it was reported by Jason Schreier that Google Stadia is out today and it already looks like a monumental flop. I heard from one person involved that pre-orders were below expectations. Other articles down the line talked about how many times the Stadia app, which again is required to use Stadia, was downloaded and installed, and the numbers were just meager. And the kind of articles and feedback you'd see at launch included things like Google Stadia was unplayable at times, that won't be acceptable for any gamer, but it's hard to review Stadia since it's an ongoing service. It's like reviewing YouTube on its first day, except Stadia didn't market Stadia as a beta product. They launched it fully, officially, as if it were a final release, when they should have done an early access period or something along those lines, because clearly Stadia was not ready for launch, which is why headlines surrounding Stadia at launch read along the lines of unplayable at times, magical in others. Right here it reads, Google Stadia launch review, a technical conceptual disaster. Here's Windows Central. Google Stadia doesn't run Destiny 2 and Red Dead Redemption 2 at 4K resolution, exhibits more input lag than Xbox One, which goes back to the point I mentioned before that certain games just ran and looked worse on Stadia, despite Stadia having more teraflops than other existing platforms. Here's an article from news outlet Kotaku. They just straight up said Google Stadia just ain't it. And while all that was happening, articles were reporting on the fact that Google Stadia will be missing many features for Monday's launch. Among the missing, 4K on PC, achievement UI, Google Assistant, family sharing, and things like that one feature where you can stream your games and then somebody can click on a link and immediately join via, YouTube live streaming and stuff like that. All of that stuff was nowhere to be found, not only at launch, but also to this day. With any rough launch, there's always a chance for a comeback if a company supports their product enough, but the nail in the coffin came for me on February of 2021 when Google Stadia announced that they'd be shutting down their first-party studios. We have decided that we will not be investing further in bringing exclusive content from our internal development team at Stadia Games and Entertainment. Jade Raymond has decided to leave Google to pursue other opportunities, though we'll continue to bring new titles from third parties to the platform. But no gaming platform can survive on just third-party games alone in a competitive landscape where companies like Sony and PlayStation, Microsoft and Xbox, and Nintendo are bringing out first-party exclusive for their respective platforms, high-quality ones at that. When I saw that Google was giving up on first-party exclusives for Stadia before these studios even had a chance to ship anything, that's when I knew that Google had given up on Stadia as a gaming platform. That's when I knew that Stadia had absolutely no chance of a comeback. And it's crazy how fast these studios were shut down. There were two of them. One was established on October of 2019, and a second one was established on March of 2020. One was based in LA, another one was based in Montreal. Barely a year later, Google decided to prematurely give up on them, which is kind of Google's thing, which is why this graveyard website for Google projects that have been killed off prematurely exists, and you can see just how extensive this list is. Now, one thing that I'll give Google credit for is that they have been handling the shutdown well, in the sense that they knew they shit the bed, and so they are not punishing customers. They are actually offering refunds across the board for software and hardware purchases. They're not offering refunds for subscription payments, but for those who purchase the Stadia hardware, which comes with a controller and a Chromecast, and for those who purchase games at full price on Stadia, you'll be refunded for that, as highlighted here by the Stadia announcement FAQ that was last updated on January 17th, 2023. Stadia refunds starting November 9th, 2022. Stadia will attempt to automatically process refunds for all purchase of games, add-on content, and subscription fees other than Stadia Pro made through the Stadia store. We ask for your patience as we work through each transaction and ask that you refrain from contacting customer support, as you'll not be able to expedite your refund during this time. We still expect the majority of refunds to be processed by January 18th, 2023. So for those who partook in Stadia and are looking for their money to be refunded, just keep an eye out and make sure that you do get your money back. On top of that, one of the biggest concerns for those who got the Stadia hardware was that the controller would be useless because its Bluetooth functionality had not been activated, but Stadia went out of their way to ensure that you can play wirelessly with Bluetooth with the Stadia controller. So you essentially got a free controller out of this whole situation because you'll be refunded for the hardware. Now, you do have until December 31st, 2023 to activate Bluetooth mode and to make that transition, so be sure to do that so the controller doesn't become dead weight. And for some of the major games that did launch on Stadia, developers are offering safe transfer options. Here's a Verge article whose headline reads, Google Stadia shutting down soon, so transfer your games and saves while you can. That spotlights how you can do that for games like Borderlands 3, Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2, Hitman 3, Elder Scrolls Online, a number of Ubisoft games, so on and so forth. Though this is far from a perfect situation, there are many games that don't offer save game transfers, as The Verge highlights here. But Google isn't just cutting and running, they are offering restitution, free Chromecast Ultra, free Bluetooth gamepad, and countless free sessions using Google's gaming PC in the cloud. But at the same time, on the developer side of things, this has been a frustrating situation because you've got certain Stadia exclusive games like pixel junk raiders that will just straight up die and cease to exist because it's Stadia exclusive and it's not being brought to other platforms. So Q Games, the developer, said with tomorrow's closure of Google Stadia, pixel junk raiders will no longer be playable. It's a sad day for our team, but we'd like to focus on the incredible journey we've been on together on planet Tantal. So there are a few games that will not be preserved, that will be gone forever because of just the nature of cloud gaming and what happens when a cloud gaming service shuts down, which is why I despise the idea of all of gaming going fully cloud rather than a combination of both local hardware gaming and cloud gaming to act as a supplement rather than a complete replacement of local hardware gaming. And for those who want other testimonials from developers who are frustrated at the lack of communication in regards to Google Stadia's shutdown, which had a number of games being developed for it, check out this video right here. Devs are furious at Google, weren't warned that Stadia is shutting down. I uploaded this a couple months ago back in October 1st, 2022, and down here you can find all of the sources, all of the testimonials from various developers who tweeted out their frustrations to the public. Even some of the bigger publishers and developers have had to go out of their way to offer restitution because of Stadia's screw-up with their service. Bungie, for example, offered Display Stadia Destiny 2 players a free month of GeForce Now. And then there's one player who put 6,000 hours into Red Dead Redemption 2 on Stadia. This player was afraid that they were going to lose all that progress, but apparently a save transfer feature has been implemented or will be implemented. And alongside that, this player got some goodies, a care package from Rockstar to make up for the concern. So it's far from a perfect situation. Stadia screw-up not only cost Google, but it cost other publishers and development studios quite a bit. But generally on the customer side of things, the fact that they are getting their money back for the hardware and software that they have purchased does make this whole situation easier to swallow. At the end of the day, I wish that Stadia could have pulled it off, because the technology is genuinely compelling once it did work properly, months after launch. The technology is undeniably cool, but the screw-ups surrounding the service side of things, the business model side of things, the feature side of things, the games library side of things, that's where Stadia had absolutely no chance of succeeding or competing against other services like GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming. The mishandling of this cool tech is just really, really unfortunate, but I do think that cloud gaming will be a big part of gaming in the future, not as the only form of gaming, but again, as a supplement to more traditional forms of gaming, where you're going to be able to use both, and both are going to be able to connect to each other, like with Xbox Cloud Gaming, where games that you play on the cloud can also be downloaded locally, and the saves are synced up, so no matter how you play, you'll always have access to the game in your preferred way, depending on the situation. Like, that's the ideal solution. I think Xbox is leading the way on that front. Stadia just had great technology, great engineers, just a piss poor vision. So that's kind of my little post-mortem of Google Stadia now that it's officially shut down, now that it's officially dead. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the life cycle of Stadia and what your experience has been like with the platform if you engaged with it. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.